You're soaring 30,000 feet in the air, trapped inside a crowded plane, and your tiny baby is screaming at the top of her lungs, cries so sharp they cut through every conversation, every heartbeat, turning the entire cabin into a pressure cooker of tension and judgment. That was exactly where Alex Thompson found himself on Flight 247 from New York to Los Angeles. At 32, Alex was a devoted single dad, broad-shouldered with tired blue eyes and a 5 o'clock shadow that hadn't been shaved in days. In his arms was 6-month-old Emma, his entire world, her little face red and scrunched up as wave after wave of wails poured out of her point 8 months earlier. Alex's life had shattered when his wife Lisa died in a sudden car accident. One moment she was driving home from the grocery store, the next she was gone, leaving him alone to figure out midnight feedings, diaper changes, and how to keep going when his heart felt permanently broken. Now he was flying across the country for an important work conference, praying Emma would sleep through the flight. But a lingering ear infection from a recent cold had turned his little girl into a bundle of pure misery. Passengers all around were starting to lose patience. The businessman in the expensive suit, too, rose up, kept shooting icy glares over his laptop. An elderly couple directly across the aisle plugged in their noise-canceling headphones and shook their heads. Whispers floated through the air. Why didn't he give her something? Some people shouldn't bring babies on planes. Alex heard every word, and each one felt like a knife twist in his already exhausted chest. He tried everything. He rocked her gently, offered the bottle she'd usually gulp down, whispered the same lullaby Lisa used to sing. Nothing worked. Sweat trickled down his back as he bounced Emma on his knee, murmuring, "It's okay, sweetheart. Daddy's right here. We're almost there." But the cries only grew louder, more desperate than a few rows ahead. In seat 14C, Sarah Jenkins heard every heartbreaking sob. At 29, Sarah was a single mom herself, traveling with her 2-year-old son Tyler, who was mercifully asleep against her chest. Sarah's warm brown eyes filled with tears of recognition. 2 years ago, her husband David had lost his battle with cancer, leaving her to raise Tyler alone. Friends drifted away, unable to handle the grief, and her in-laws slowly faded too. She knew what it felt like to be alone in a crowd with a crying child and no one to hand the baby to for 5 minutes of relief. Sarah glanced back and caught sight of Alex, his face pale, eyes red from lack of sleep, hands trembling as he tried to soothe his daughter. Something deep inside her, that fierce maternal instinct mixed with raw empathy, refused to let her sit still. She looked down at sleeping Tyler, whispered, "Mommy will be right back." Angel gently buckled him in his seat with a blanket and stood up, even though the seatbelt sign was still on. She walked a few steps to Alex's row and leaned over the empty middle seat. "Excuse me," she said softly, her voice steady and kind. "I know this is forward, but I'm a mom too. I can hear how much pain she's in. May I try holding her?" Alex looked up, startled, meeting her gentle gaze. In that split second, he didn't see judgment, only understanding. He nodded gratefully and carefully passed Emma over. Sarah cradled the baby close, feeling the tiny body stiff with distress. Then, without hesitation, she did the unthinkable. She draped her lightweight nursing cover over her shoulder for privacy, settled into the empty seat beside Alex, and discreetly began to breastfeed Emma. She was still producing milk after recently weaning Tyler, and in that moment, it felt like the most natural thing in the world to offer comfort the only way she knew how. Gasps rippled through the nearby seats. The businessman muttered, "That's completely inappropriate." The elderly woman raised both eyebrows but stayed silent. Alex's jaw actually dropped as he stared in stunned disbelief. But then, miracle of miracles, Emma latched on and the cries stopped almost instantly. The piercing wails faded into quiet, rhythmic suckling. The entire cabin seemed to exhale at once. Tears sprang to Alex's eyes. "I don't even know how to thank you," he whispered, voice thick. "She's been hurting so much, and nothing I did helped." Sarah smiled through her own misty eyes. "We parents have to look out for each other. I've had nights where Tyler screamed for hours and I thought I'd lose my mind. This is nothing." As Emma fed peacefully and eventually drifted into deep sleep, Alex and Sarah started talking, quiet voices weaving together like they'd known each other far longer than 20 minutes. He told her about losing Lisa, how guilt still crushed him some nights because he'd been buried in work deadlines when she needed him most. Sarah shared about David's long illness, how she promised him she'd keep living fully for Tyler's sake, even when it felt impossible. They laughed softly over parenting disasters, Alex's attempt at making sweet potato puree that exploded all over the kitchen, Sarah's story of Tyler taking his first step straight into a pyramid of soup cans at the supermarket. The flight attendant walked by, noticed the now peaceful baby, and gave Sarah a discreet thumbs up and an extra blanket. Slowly, the mood in the cabin shifted. The elderly couple slipped a small bag of cookies over with a kind nod. Even the grumpy businessman closed his laptop and stared out the window, tension gone from his shoulders. When Emma finally unlatched and fell into a deep, contented sleep, Sarah gently passed her back. Their hands brushed, and both felt an unexpected spark, warm and undeniable. "She's absolutely beautiful," Sarah whispered, "and you're doing an incredible job." Alex felt color rise in his cheeks, something he hadn't felt in months. "I'm Alex," he said quietly. "Sarah," she replied, her smile lighting the dim cabin like sunrise. They kept talking across the aisle for the rest of the flight, stolen glances and shared smiles every time Tyler stirred or Emma sighed in her sleep. Sarah's phone buzzed once with a text from Mark, the man she'd been dating casually for 6 months, demanding to know her exact landing time. She silenced it, a flicker of unease crossing her face. Alex noticed, but didn't PRYAS the captain announced descend into Los Angeles. A quiet sadness settled over them both. This magical connection born in the sky might, in the moment, they stepped onto solid ground. But just before landing, Sarah scribbled her number on a napkin and pressed it into Alex's hand. "In case Emma ever needs an emergency Annie while you're in town," she said with a playful wink that hid how much she hoped he'd call. The plane touched down smoothly. As passengers stood to gather their bags, Alex watched Sarah wake Tyler and sling her bag over her shoulder. Their eyes met one last time across the crowded aisle, full of unspoken possibility. Little did they know, waiting just beyond the gate was Mark, flowers in hand and jealousy already simmering in his chest, ready to complicate everything this chance encounter had started. Word count: 1012. But what happens when the kindness that saved a flight collides with real life? Messy relationships, buried guilt, and the terrifying risk of falling in love again. Alex stepped off the jet bridge carrying a still sleeping Emma, heart lighter than it had been in months. He spotted Sarah ahead, Tyler bouncing excitedly on her hip as they headed toward baggage claim. Before he could catch up to say a proper goodbye, a tall man in a leather jacket strode forward, handed Sarah a bouquet of roses, and pulled her into a possessive hug. Alex hung back, watching Mark kiss her cheek while shooting a territorial glance around, as if daring anyone to approach. Sarah's smile looked strained as she thanked him, but she caught Alex's eye over Mark's shoulder and gave a small, apologetic wave. Alex nodded, forced a smile, and turned toward his own carousel, telling himself it was silly to feel disappointed after one extraordinary conversation. Yet 2 days later, with his conference sessions wrapping early, Alex couldn't resist. He texted the number on the napkin. "Emma's been an angel ever since takeoff. Coffee to say thank you properly?" Sarah's reply came within minutes. "I'd love that. Santa Monica Pier Cafe tomorrow morning." What started as coffee stretched into an entire day. They pushed strollers along the boardwalk, let the kids play in the sand, shared churros and laughter that felt effortless. Alex opened up about the emotional affair he'd had with a coworker during Lisa's final stressful months, how he'd confessed everything before she died, but still carried crushing shame. Sarah listened without judgment, her hand resting lightly on his arm. "Pain makes us human," she said gently. "What matters is choosing better next time." As the sun dipped into the ocean, painting the sky gold, their conversation grew quieter, more charged. Sarah's phone rang repeatedly, Mark's name flashing. She stepped away to take the call, voice tight as she insisted she was just with a friend from the plane. When she returned, her eyes were shadowed. Alex didn't push, but the spark between them burned brighter. Alex's stomach dropped, memories of his own betrayal flooding back. "I can't be part of hurting someone else," he said, voice raw. "I've been that guy. It destroys lives." They parted that day with aching politeness, both miserable. Sarah blocked Mark's relentless texts, calling her every name he could think of for emotionally cheating on that flight and every moment after. Alex threw himself into work and fatherhood, trying to convince himself the connection had been a fluke. But late-night messages crept in anyway, first about the kids, then about missing each other's voices. 2 weeks later, Sarah texted, "Can we talk? No pressure, just talk." They met on the beach after the kids were asleep, babysat by Sarah's sister. Walking barefoot in the cool sand under stars, they laid everything bare. Alex admitted how terrified he was of loving someone else and losing them again. Sarah confessed she'd stayed with Mark far too long out of fear that no one good would ever want a widow with a toddler. "But you," she said, stopping to face him, "you see me. All of me. The tired mom, the grieving wife, the woman who still wants to laugh and dream." Alex took her hands. "And you see me, the dad who's scared he'll never be enough. The man who made mistakes but wants to be better. With you, I already am." This time when they kissed, there was no guilt, only certainty. Mark showed up one last time at the airport the day Sarah was flying home, cornering Alex near security and accusing him of stealing his girlfriend. Alex stayed calm. She wasn't property to steal. She chose to be free. Respect that and let her go. Defeated, Mark walked away. Over the following months, Alex and Sarah built something real across the distance. Daily video calls where Emma and Tyler babbled at each other, weekend visits that turned into long stays. Alex accepted a job transfer to California. On a quiet evening 6 months later, watching their kids play together in the backyard, he got down on one knee and asked Sarah to blend their broken families into one whole, beautiful one. She said yes with tears streaming down her face. The moment the plane doors opened, reality crashed in like cold air. Alex stepped into the jet bridge with Emma, finally sleeping against his chest, his heart still racing from everything that had just happened. He scanned the crowd ahead, hoping to catch Sarah one last time, but then he saw him, a tall guy in a leather jacket marching straight to her with a huge bouquet of red roses. The man pulled Sarah into a tight hug, kissed her cheek, and wrapped an arm around her waist like he was marking territory. Sarah's smile looked forced, her eyes briefly meeting Alex's over the man's shoulder. She gave a small, almost guilty wave before disappearing into the terminal with Tyler bouncing on her hip. Alex told himself it was nothing, just a beautiful moment that happened at 30,000 feet and would stay there. He collected his bags, rented a car, and focused on the conference and Emma. But 2 nights later, lying awake in his hotel room, while Emma slept peacefully in the portable crib, he pulled out the napkin with Sarah's number. His thumbs hovered over the screen before he finally typed, "Emma hasn't made a single peep since that flight. Still owe you the biggest thank you coffee in California. You free tomorrow?" Her reply came in seconds, more than free. Santa Monica Pier Cafe, 10 a.m. The next morning, the ocean sparkled under bright sunlight as they pushed strollers side by side along the boardwalk. Tyler squealed at seagulls while Emma kicked her legs happily. Coffee turned into lunch, lunch turned into ice cream, and by late afternoon, they were sitting on the sand watching the kids dig sloppy holes. Conversation flowed without effort. Alex admitted the darkest corner of his past, how during Lisa's final months, overwhelmed and distant, he'd crossed an emotional line with a coworker, late-night messages that never became physical but still felt like betrayal. He confessed everything to Lisa before she passed, but the shame still woke him some nights. Sarah listened quietly, then squeezed his hand. "Grief makes us do things we never thought we would. You owned it. That's what matters." No judgment, just warmth that made his chest ache in a way that felt dangerously like hope. Yes, sunset painted the sky orange. Sarah's phone kept buzzing. Mark's name flashed repeatedly. She excused herself, walking a few steps away, voice low but tense. "I told you. I'm with a friend I met on the plane." "No, it's not like that. I'll call you later." When she came back, her smile was dimmer. Alex pretended not to notice, but the spark between them only grew stronger. That night, Sarah ended it with Mark over the phone. His jealousy had been building for months, checking her location, questioning every male client, accusing her of flirting if she laughed too long at a playground dad joke. She told him she needed someone who trusted her, not controlled her. He begged, cried, promised to change. Out of exhaustion and leftover fear of being alone, she agreed to one last dinner to talk it through. But the entire time, her mind was on Alex's gentle laugh and the way he looked at Emma like she was the most precious thing on earth. That a few days later they met again at a sunny park. The kids chased each other in circles, collapsing in giggles. While Emma and Tyler napped on a blanket under a tree, Alex leaned over and kissed Sarah, soft, slow, full of everything he'd been afraid to feel again. She kissed him back with the same hunger, then pulled away, eyes shining with tears. "There's something I need to tell you," she whispered. "I was seeing Mark. I broke it off, but technically it only ended this week. I don't want to start anything with lies." Alex's heart sank. His own history flashed before him. "I can't be the reason someone else gets hurt," he said, voice rough. "I've been that guy once. I know the damage it does." They left the park politely, hearts heavy. Sarah went home and blocked Mark after a flood of angry texts, calling her a cheater for every smile she'd shared with Alex. Alex buried himself in conference sessions and bedtime routines, convincing himself the connection had been too good to be real anyway. But late-night texts started slipping through. First just photos of the kids, then longer messages about missing the sound of each other's voice. 2 weeks later, Sarah wrote, "Can we just talk? No expectations." They met on the beach after the kids were asleep with her sister babysitting. Moonlight silvered the waves as they walked barefoot. Sarah spoke first. "I stayed with Mark way too long because I was terrified no decent man would want a widow with a toddler and baggage. But you never made me feel like baggage. You made me feel seen." Alex stopped walking and faced her. "And you saw the real me, the dad who's terrified he'll never be enough, the guy who screwed up once and swore he'd never risk hurting anyone again. But with you, I want to risk it. I want to be better." This time when they kissed, there was no hesitation, no guilt, just certainty that felt like coming home. Mark made one final appearance the day Sarah was due to fly back home. He cornered Alex outside airport security, voice loud, face red. "You think you can just steal my girlfriend because of some sob story on a plane?" Alex stayed calm. "She was never yours to steal. She chose freedom. Respect that." Passers-by stared. Security hovered. Mark finally turned and walked away, defeated. Over the next months, Alex and Sarah built something solid across the miles. Daily video calls where Emma and Tyler babbled nonsense at each other. Long weekend visits that stretched longer each time. Alex applied for a job transfer to California and got it. 6 months after that fateful flight, on a quiet evening in their new shared backyard, with the kids chasing fireflies, Alex dropped to one knee. "Sarah, you gave my daughter comfort when I couldn't. You gave me hope when I thought mine was gone forever. Marry me. Let's make this beautiful blended family official."